And we're going to get started with our welcomes.
Sure. Welcome, everybody. My name is Stephen Alexander. I am one of the Tradition Kitchen's ambassadors, and I've been working with Julia for a while, and I can say she is awesome, and we are so grateful to her for organizing all of these classes for us. We're also very lucky to have all 63 of you with us today, so that's really awesome. We're happy to see you here. I would like to give Julia an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we're going to take a selfie, a Zoom selfie, and then we're going to get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. I love working with you and all of our amazing kitchen ambassadors. So thank you for all the great work you do to make our experiences possible. Tradition Kitchens is a totally volunteer-run experience. So we spend our time helping curate cooking classes from different cultures and experiences, and we try to bring together community in meaningful ways, especially during these remote times. So to kick us off, we actually want to premiere something very exciting from our kitchen ambassadors. It's the introduction of our Tradition Kitchen's values. So you all are actually the first group that gets to see this exciting short 1-minute video that was put together by one of our ambassadors, Emmy, and features all of our current ambassadors. And it tells you a little bit about what we stand for. So I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen. I'm going to increase the audio as much as possible. It's a little soft, so I'm hoping you can hear us as we share a little bit about our values and what we stand for. So 1 second. As I do that, I want to invite everybody to turn on your video so that once this video finishes, we will take our selfie together, which is our Zoom selfie, and it's a tradition for Tradition Kitchens. So can you all see this on your screen? It's a video image, a still image right now? Yeah, okay, great, here we go.
Embrace inclusivity. We welcome everyone into our kitchen.
All cultures, generations, and neighbors.
Near and far.
Local and global.
Put people first.
For us, it's about the people, then the food.
A bagel wouldn't be a bagel if it weren't for the bakers who made it.
We put the happiness of our students, teachers, and ambassadors first.
Champion creativity.
We strive for innovation, hosting unique food storytelling events, weaving recipes and stories together, and showcasing diverse traditional culinary content.
Foster community.
When you attend one of our classes, you become a part of our kitchen crew and come away with a special connection and recipe to bring into your life.
We hope that we've made a positive impact on your day.
Yay! We hope you liked our video. Thank you, our ambassadors, for putting it together, especially Emmy, who was a master editor and visionary behind Pass the Spatula. So if anyone wants to give us a reaction with a thank you, Donna, for the great applause, you can high five. You can also use your hands, but we also have in Zoom reactions on the bottom right of your screen. Some of you might just have thumbs up. Some of you might have applause. Some of you have hearts. Thanks, Sally, for the heart, and Nicole and Charlie. It's so great to look out and be able to share our story with you. And thanks for being here. Oh, I see Karan turned on her video, I think, which is great. I want to give a quick shout out to Karan, who taught us this summer how to make hoe cakes and greens. Was that right? What we learned with you? It was delicious.
Yeah, that was me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. And part of the joy of Tradition Kitchens is bringing people together who may not know each other and connecting one another. So let's take our selfie. I see so many of you on video, which is awesome. I'm going to give everyone 1 more minute to turn on their video. I have almost all of you on one screen. And I'm going to ask you to look at the camera. So I'm going to take 2 shots. Let's see, Deanne, you're coming on camera. How about Elaine, Darko, Mara? Are you able to join us? Lori and Paul have a prop. They've got the potato ready to go. Let's see, Carol, come on video for us. Janice, Nicola, Mara. I'm just gonna try to shout them out and see. If not, we'll Photoshop a latke in their place. Okay, I'm gonna call us and count us down. So everybody smiling. Oh, look at this. Oh my God, Carol's on video, yay. Okay, 3, 2, wait, Carol, put your hand down, we can see you. Okay, great, 3, 2, 1. Yes, okay, one more to get everybody else in the picture. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Amazing, thank you so much. Okay, this is these are our coming attractions. We are ready for the main event. Thanks everyone. I can't believe we have 66 people here. I'm gonna turn it over to Stephen to be our MC and introduce our exciting event and all that's happening. But I do just really want to give a special shout out to Heidi and her family, who I have known Heidi for a long time, since college. And she is just a wonderful champion of creative ideas and being a great friend online. And I saw that she was always encouraging and cheering on for Tradition Kitchens events. And I want to thank her because we planned this class in like 7 minutes, going back and forth on Facebook. So the power of technology in these crazy times, I haven't seen her in a long time, and just makes me so happy to get to meet her family and have her here. So huge shout out to Heidi and family. We can give them an early round of applause and appreciation. And we're so excited for today. So Stephen, take it away, run the show. It's all yours as our ambassador in chief.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your kind comments on the values video. We're so excited to have you here today. And happy Hanukkah to those who are celebrating. And we are so happy to introduce Heidi and her entire family. She has her husband and her 2 sous chefs. So Heidi, take it away, introduce yourself. We'd love to hear a little about your family, where you're from, and your connection to the dishes you're about to make with us.
Sure. So I'm Heidi. This is my 10-year-old daughter, Ayala, my 7-year-old daughter, Dafna. They are my excellent sous chefs. And behind the camera here, we have my husband, Asaf. Yep, giving the thumbs up. And he is from Israel. And he and I lived together in Israel for 3 years, which is where I fell in love with shakshuka. I had never heard of it before moving to Israel, but I discovered how delicious it is. And he's going to jump in during the shakshuka phase because he's the one who taught me to make it. So yeah, I got to give him credit. And Dr. Shakshuka, which is an article that he read about making shakshuka, who gave us some tips too to help perfect our technique. Qualification, Dr. Shakshuka is not a real doctor. But we love to cook together. We're here in Colorado now. I'm originally from the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. I met Julia in college, and then I moved to Israel, and then we moved out here to Colorado, and we loved it so much here, we've never left. But we do love cooking as a family. Oh, and the dog who is sleeping on the floor, waiting for her turn to come in and clean up when we're done. That's her job in the family. And these dishes are some of my favorites. The shakshuka is great to make for brunch. It's healthy. And actually, both the shakshuka and the latkes that we're going to make today, which are a slightly different recipe than you may have tried before, our latkes are going to be gluten-free. My mom is celiac, which sent me on a journey to learn to make equally delicious gluten-free foods for when we have her over. And I also, about a year ago, started getting involved with the Whole30 dietary reset, where you cut out a bunch of stuff to try to boost your health. So completely by coincidence, both of these recipes are Whole30 compliant too, if that's something that interests you, and paleo, and just generally healthy, a great way to get more vegetables into your life without sacrificing any flavor. So we are going to start today with the shakshuka because it's going to have to simmer for quite a while. So we're going to get the shakshuka going, then we're going to switch over to latkes, and then we're going to check back on the shakshuka. So Stephen, should we get started cooking, or did you have anything you wanted to add before we get this?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so come on in. Oops, sorry, into the kitchen here. I'm going to have my sous chefs. I've got one whole bulb of garlic here, just broken up into cloves. And I've got 2 sous chef stations set up over here. My sous chefs are going to wash their hands like good sous chefs should. There's a tongue twister for you. How many sous chefs should wash their hands if the sous chefs should? And they are going to peel our garlic, and then we're going to crush it. So if you're cooking right along, you're along with us here, you're going to want to get your garlic started. You're gonna peel your cloves and then just chop off what I always think of as the belly button. We don't want that little brown spot on top. And I'm also gonna get a little bit of oil going. For the shakshuka, I'm gonna use olive. Just a little bit here. I like to do shakshuka in a cast iron pan. And we're gonna go, since our garlic is still in progress and we're not quite ready, I'm just gonna put this on like about a 4 out of 10 for now, just to get it, just cast iron takes a while to get heated, but I don't want my olive oil to get too hot too soon. When we're getting closer and we have our oil or our garlic ready, I'm gonna crank it up to about medium, about a 6 or so, 5 or 6. And then as our garlic is ready, we use our garlic crusher.
Mama, should I turn off the tip?
Yes. You can also use one of these if you prefer, but I always tend to grate my fingers, so this is much more foolproof in my book. We're just gonna give it a squeeze. Thank you. Incoming garlic.
And for those of you who are cooking along, if at any point you want to, us to come and zoom in on you, let us know in the chat, ask questions, comments. It's all about interacting with each other during this time. So we know we also have a lot of viewers who are taking good notes for their future cooking of this, which is also wonderful. But Heidi, I wanted to just give your apron a shout out. It's very cute. Was that a present or did you just pick it out and love it?
No, someone gave this to me, and to tell you the truth, I can't remember who now. Hopefully they're not watching and feeling offended. But it says nash now, kvetch later. And nash is Yiddish for like eating or snacking, and kvetch is Yiddish for complaining. So it's eat now, complain later. Focus on the food, which is the motto in our family, I think. Focus on the food. While our garlics are being peeled and prepped by our sous chefs, I kind of just wanted to point out that although latkes are, a Chanukah food, they are shared with lots of cultures across Eastern Europe. We have some family friends who are Christian who are of Polish descent, and they love our latkes because they're used to them. I don't remember what they call them, but they are familiar with them outside of a Jewish context. So there's a lot of overlap here. Thank you. You want to crush this one? See those strong hands. All right. From playing the viola. Yes, she has strong hands from the viola.
Heidi, Donna has a question for you. She said,
Sure.
What's the quickest way to peel garlic?
So there's a lot of different gadgets out there. I've tried some of them. I've tried the silicone tube.
Before I pressed it, I forgot.
That's okay. I'm gonna just grab one of these, 2 of these to demonstrate. My 2 favorite ways are if the shape of the clove allows, like if it's kind of long and skinny, just to twist it back and forth. So one hand goes one way, one hand goes the other. And you can see these are already just starting to fall right off. You can peel them. Here we compost. So, oops, I dropped that one in there. We're not gonna use that one. Another way, like this one is kind of too fat. You would have to have really strong hands to get a good twist on that. So you can put it down. Just make sure that the sharp part, the part that I called the belly button earlier, is pointed down into your countertop. Otherwise, you're gonna get an owie on your hand. So I just take the palm of my hand, can push down on it. If it's a really tough one, you can bang. And then you can see your peel just comes right off. I've also seen other, like I said, gadgets, or some people will roll it. I find the other thing is, if your garlic is just a little bit older, it's going to peel easier. When you get it super fresh, like from the farmer's market, sometimes the peel is really hard to get off of there. So if you do find yourself with a bulb of garlic, it's super hard to peel, let it sit for a week and come back to it. And I think you'll find you have an easier time of peeling it. How are we doing over there, sous chefs? Do we have any more ready?
2.
Thank you.
I have this one. And that.
Another note about our dishes is, so the latke is more of an Eastern European traditional food, and the shakshuka, there's a little bit of debate over where it came from, but consensus seems to be more or less North Africa. And that is kind of an interesting metaphor for Israeli culture. You have, North African Jews, you have European Jews, and everybody kind of comes together and it's one big mishmash. So our, thank you, our brunch, well, out here it's brunch, I guess for you guys on the East Coast it's lunch, is going to be a great cultural mashup, just like you see every day in Israel. Some of this out of here. I can also talk a little bit more about the ingredients while we're doing our garlic. So we already have washed and started here one package, but this is about how many tomatoes I'm going to use because they're little. This is a 2-pound package from Costco. You can see compared to my hand, they're pretty small. If you had big tomatoes, you'd only need a couple. Thank you. And this much is going to make about enough for our family of 4, depending on how hungry we are and what else we're having along with it. If you're cooking for a big group, you'd want to maybe double or triple this recipe, especially if it's your main dish. How's our oil doing? Coat the whole pan here.
Mama, I have a tip for the garlic.
You have a tip for the garlic. Let's hear it, darling.
What I do is I start by chopping off the top, which loosens up the ends, and then I peel it off. And to get the extra off, I rub them.
Okay. So there's another technique. First, chop off the belly button and then rub them between your hands like this. And that's how Ayala has had some success. All right, you're done with your garlic. What about you, Lily?
You wash it.
There's a question about the temperature, how hot the pan needs to be.
We don't want to go too hot because this is going to be a dish that simmers. So we want it about medium. We want it enough to release the aromas of the garlic, but not so much that it browns it. Garlic is a little bit temperamental, and if it gets too browned too quickly, it gets a little bit bitter. So I have it preheating here on a 4. I've got 2, 4, medium, 6, 8, and high. So I guess it's 0 to 10. So I've got it on about a 4, and it's been preheating this whole time. If I didn't have it fully up to temperature, I might go to a medium. We're just going to put our garlic in. If you don't get a good sizzle, you might want to turn it up. Like I was hoping for a little more sizzle than that. So I'm going to turn it up to a medium. You don't want to get bitter garlic, but you do want to release those delicious flavors and aromas. Now, if you were going to make it spicy, I have crushed red pepper flakes here. This is when you'd add them. I'm not going to add them because girls don't have nearly as much of a spice tolerance as I do, and I want them to be able to enjoy it too. You can do spiced dried red pepper flakes like these. You can also put in like a fresh hot red or green pepper, like a serrano, or depending on how hot you like it. And now would be a good time to add that. Let's finish cutting our tomatoes here while our garlic is going. If not, would you like to cut the rest of our tomatoes? So these don't have to be fancy. There you go. I'm going to cut one to show them, and you can cut those other ones. This isn't for a presentation. We're not going to see these. It's all just going to cook down more or less to a mush. So I'm just going to cut it in half and half again. I'm going to get the little stem out there and then cut it in half. Maybe I'll go one more half here. So you can slice them, you can dice them. You just don't want them to be, you know, like a huge half a tomato, because we want these to be able to cook evenly and nicely. That's the most important thing, really, I think, when you're cooking anything, is just even size. So if you have some that are huge and some that are tiny, you're going to get some that are overcooked and some that are undercooked. I can hear our garlic sizzling now that I've turned it up to medium. Yep, keep stirring that. We don't want it to brown. While Dafna finishes cutting our tomatoes. So we have here, we cheated a little bit and did a little bit of prep just so that we'd have more time to talk and show. If you guys are at home cooking along, keep chopping your tomatoes. We'll give you some time to catch up. Does anybody have any questions up to this point?
Heidi, I'm curious. There's so many types of tomatoes. There are cherry tomatoes, Roma. Like, what do you prefer? What's the best kind?
So I buy whatever they have on stock at Costco, honestly, just for fiscal purposes. It's the best deal. These are, they just call them Allegro tomatoes. I've seen them also called Campari tomatoes. I find that the smaller tomatoes have a better flavor, but I think that for this dish, it would be a waste of cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are so delicious just on their own or in a salad, and they're quite expensive. And it's not necessary for this dish to get something quite that flavorful because we're going to be adding a lot of other flavors. So cherry tomatoes, I like when you need a tomato flavor to really stand on its own. You can also do, you know, the big hothouse supermarket tomatoes, but I do find that they have a little bit less flavor. Again, one thing that we're going to do that is our own family adaptation, we're going to add a little bit of marinara sauce. So this is my favorite brand, Rouse. I'm not a paid ambassador. I just really like their stuff. And that is going to just add a little bit more body and flavor to it. So that helps rescue you too. Like if it's the middle of winter and it's hard to get a good flavorful tomato, we're going to get a lot of flavor from this because, you know, they pack these and make this sauce at the height of freshness and ripeness in the summer. So, you know, if we were making this in the summer with fresh, locally grown tomatoes that we got at the farmer's market that are full of flavor, I might not use this. But since we're cooking here in the winter with kind of greenhouse grown, whatever we can get, we're going to add this marinara sauce to add some more flavor. It smells like our garlic is going over here. Let's take a look at that stuff just so they can see it's starting to turn a little bit green, which means that it is starting to cook, but it's not brown. We don't want any brown bits because, like I said, they're going to get bitter.
Heidi, someone was wondering if they can use canned diced tomatoes drained.
Yes, you can. Again, it's going to come down to flavor. I find that they don't have as much flavor as a fresh tomato, but if that's what you have on hand, you absolutely can. In that case, I would recommend the marinara sauce because it's going to add a little bit more, just a little bit more texture to it too, because I find those canned ones, even when you drain them, they're still just a little bit more watery than a fresh tomato. They don't have quite as much bite or mouthfeel, but it's absolutely possible to do that. All right. And our sous chef over here has done a wonderful job of cutting up the remainder of her tomatoes. So we're going to put those in here. Good job. High five. Ooh. Yes. So now we're going to add our tomatoes here. I'll go ahead and give that a stir. Now we're going to add a couple of bay leaves.
My sister.
Yes. So Daphna, our younger daughter and excellent sous chef here, her name means laurel, like the leaves. So bay leaves, and I didn't know this until actually we decided to name her this. Bay leaves are actually laurel leaves. And we were trying to decide, I was pregnant with her and I didn't know, you know, we wanted to give her some sort of natural name, a flower or an animal or something related to nature. And we just were having trouble coming up with what we should name her. And I was cooking a beef stew recipe that was in Hebrew that I had, and it called for alei daphna, which means leaves of laurel, leaves of daphna. And then I realized that bay leaves are actually leaves of the laurel plant, and that would be a great name for her. So her name, Daphna, means laurel in English, and it was inspired by cooking. It was inspired by bay leaves.
Yeah, I know we crank up the heat perhaps.
Yeah,
We really want it to simmer down and
so yes, and Ayala's name means a female deer. So I'm going to add 2 bay leaves here. And I cook by eye. If your bay leaves are tiny, let me find an example. You're going to need more. If they're huge, you're going to need less. And these are not super homogeneous. So, whoops. Can you grab that from me? Thank you, Laura. So if you've got a
Denise says that she has a laurel hedge and is wondering if that's the same. She says that bay leaves seem to be a lot smaller than what she has.
That could be, you know, there are different varieties, and I wouldn't advise to eat, this says Turkish bay leaves, but yeah, I wouldn't advise you to eat them without checking with your local, maybe university horticulture station, just to make sure that they are the edible kind, because I know with lots of plants you have a decorative variety and an edible variety. So I'm going to put 2 average size bay leaves in here. What do you think, Asaf? Does that look good, or should we add a?
I think 2 is good. And I think we can just leave him alone for now.
We want to add our smoked paprika.
Oh.
So you can use spicy paprika here. Again, if you're making it spicy, you can use like a hot paprika. This is just a smoked paprika, so we get nice smoked flavor, but no heat, because again, we want the whole family to be able to enjoy it. And I'm going to apologize to you measurers out there. This is how I roll. We're just going to put some in, mix it up. I I like to taste as I go. So once this gets mixed in and starts to cook, I'm going to taste it. If it tastes like it needs a little bit more smoked flavor, I'm going to add a little bit
I'll
more.
help taste it.
Yes, I always have volunteers to help taste. I like to cook by eye and by nose and by taste. That's what I
By
like.
ear.
Sometimes by ear. That's what I like about cooking, and why I'm a better cook than I am baker, because I can taste as I go and adjust. I've had a few failures with baked goods because you mix it, you put it in, you hope for the best. All right, that's smelling good. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt too. I've got some Himalayan pink sea salt here. You can use whatever kind of salt you like. Regular Morton's is fine too.
Heidi, when do you add the marinara sauce?
Once these tomatoes have had a little bit of a chance to break down, we're going to add a little bit of marinara sauce. I don't want to add it just yet because it's still a little bit cold from the fridge, and that's would bring down our temperature quite a bit. So I want to get these guys really going and get the heat built up before I put in this cold sauce. So we're going to start with our latkes and check back when we add the marinara sauce and taste for salt and paprika levels. So here's our shakshuka simmering away. And later when it's all ready, we're going to add the eggs too. So let's change gears to our latkes. Yes. So I have here my food processor.
I think the answer to the salt question is by taste, a pinch, or how much you think.
I just did like maybe a quarter teaspoon, but I don't cook with a lot of salt, just for health purposes. And
I love salt.
you can always, my theory is you can always add more to your own plate, but you can't take it out. So I do put in some when I cook because it helps bind the flavors together, and it makes it a richer flavor, but I tend to always be understated on my salt. All right, so for our latkes, I have here my food processor with the grater attachment. You can grate these by hand on a box grater too. Just be prepared for some sore muscles the next day. So for our latkes, I have here 4 decent size russet potatoes. And I'm just going to chop these in a way that they're going to fit. We're going to start with the potatoes, and I'll show you what. You have to take off the lid. There we go. There we go. Okay, go ahead. You can do 2, and sister can do 2.
There's no need to peel the potatoes.
Yeah, it's all just going to get shredded in. And from what I have read, a lot of the nutrients of the potato are in the skin. So I like to buy organic potatoes just because there's less chemicals involved. Go ahead. But you can peel them if you would like. If you don't like the skins, go ahead and peel them. But I don't find it necessary. Okay, he's going.
Heidi, Dan would like to see the size of the grate.
Sure.
Move your hand, please.
So this one gives a pretty coarse grate. I would say if you're just starting out making these, if you have a choice, do a slightly finer grate. But like I said, my arms get too tired doing the box grater, so I just do it on here, and these will work just fine. The finer the grate you have, the more homogeneous your mixture is going to be when you're done, and it's going to be a little bit more fluffy and like a pancake as opposed to like a big fried hash brown. So the texture does have some bearing, but not on the flavor, just on the texture. And I actually, now that I'm used to them this way, I like them with this coarser grate because it gives like a really nice crunch. The finer grate you have, you can still get a nice crunch on it, but you're not going to feel those individual pieces on the outside. And it's going to look less like a latke and more like a hash brown that you might get, at a restaurant, like one of those McDonald's ovals. So I think that this gives like a more rustic, authentic feel anyhow. But they are a little bit harder to work with just to keep them formed, to get them into the pan when they're the coarse grate like this.
Heidi, I'm wondering myself if I've had really small latkes and I've had like massive latkes, so I'm wondering what size you prefer.
I like to do about the size of the palm of my hand. And I'll show you my technique when we're making them. I like to put a little bit of the mixture kind of in between my hands, and I sort of smush it like this. So we're going for about this size. And the reason I like to do that is when you get those giant latkes, it's really hard to get them cooked all the way through in the middle without getting the outsides edges burned. If you can manage to make a huge latke that's thin enough to cook evenly, it's really hard to flip and keep it together and handle it all as one. And the little tiny ones, I find you just don't get quite as much of that soft middle. It just becomes all completely crunchy, and it's, you don't get that contrast in textures. So with the size that I make, you're gonna get a nice crunchy, crispy outside and still a little bit like soft deliciousness on the inside. So that's why I like to go for about a palm size, because it's easy to handle for flipping in the pan. And it's easy to get a crisp outside and still cook all the way through on the middle. So let's get a little bit more grating going. We're gonna check on our shakshuka over here.
Yeah,
Speaking
and
of
to answer your
shakshuka,
questions, we
yeah.
did not add onions, although we have seen versions where people add onions in the beginning and simmer along with the tomatoes.
So for both of these things, the shakshuka and the latkes, we're making a very basic recipe, and then you can get as creative as you want. Like with the shakshuka, people like to put in a sweet red pepper in addition to a spicy pepper sometimes. Some people put onions. You'll see a lot of different things in here. These are just the very base, and then you can get as creative as you want. You can stick with this. If you're a traditionalist, you can have it very simple, just like we're making today, or you can put your own flair on it and get as creative as you'd like. So,
and some places even add meat, like a sausage filling.
Yeah, you could do like a turkey Italian sausage would be good in here, or a pork Italian sausage if you eat pork. That would really crank up the brunch factor for this, to add like a little bit of breakfast sausage.
I think it's getting a little full. Might be getting a little.
Okay, so take a pause there, and we're going to start squeezing them in just a second. But I want to show our viewers at home we're about ready to add our marinara. So you can see here, we still have a few skins and chunks, but for the most part, we have not added any water to this. This is all just water from the tomatoes. But it's getting fairly broken down now, and it's nice and bubbling away. So I'm going to go ahead and add, again, sorry to you measurers, but I have a full jar here, and I'm going to go about, I'm going to put a half a jar in, and this is a 28-ounce jar for our 2 pounds of tomatoes. And you can see it just adds a little bit of richness and thickness. And like I said, it adds a little bit of primely ripe tomato flavor when during the winter we can't get quite as delicious of a flavor on the tomatoes as we'd like. But this is not required. You can make it without the marinara. You just have to have a little bit more patience to let those tomatoes break down. So we're gonna let that go. I'm gonna taste it now too. Anybody else want to taste? Tasting spoons. There you go. We're gonna taste it for salt and for paprika. Just be careful, girls, it might be a little bit hot. It's good on the salt. The other thing to keep in mind is if you are using a marinara, they oftentimes have quite a bit of salt in them. So you're going to want to adjust down the amount of salt you put when you're just starting out with the tomatoes. Otherwise, you may end up with too salty of a shakshuka. Like I put maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in here, and now thanks to the marinara, I think it's like the perfect level of saltiness. I'm going to add a little bit more. Do you girls agree on the salt? You probably want more salt because you always want more salt.
I want more salt.
You would like a salt block, I think, if I had one. I'm going to add a little bit more smoked paprika just because I'm not quite getting that flavor all the way through like I want. There we go. My sous chef's going to mix it. All right, let's put away our tasting spoons here in the sink. Okay, we're going to switch back to our latkes now.
I've only done.
Okay, well, there's more to do. So
I've done 2.
we're out of room. We still have 3 more potato halves here. So we're out of room in our grater. So we're going to take a pause here to squeeze these out. Now, I'm going to use cheesecloth that I have here. You can also use a tea towel if you have one that is fine enough that it's going to squeeze out the moisture, but not let the chunks through. This is a really important phase. If your latkes are too moist, they're just not going to hold together. You're going to put them in the pan and you're just going to end up with a pan full of shredded potato and onion. And this step is also really crucial in making gluten-free latkes. Probably if you've ever made latkes before, they've had either flour or matzah meal or cornmeal or breadcrumbs, some kind of grain in there. And these are not only gluten-free, they're grain-free. And here's how we're going to do it. When we squeeze the potatoes, we're going to squeeze them into a bowl. And we're going to let the bowl sit. And you're going to see that the starch is all going to sink to the bottom. So I'm getting a pretty good squeeze on these here. It's a little bit of a messy business, but that's okay. A messy kitchen is a happy kitchen. My mom used to have a magnet on her fridge that said a messy kitchen is a happy kitchen and this kitchen is delirious. And as Asaf can attest, I love to cook, but I make a pretty good mess that he usually comes in and cleans up. Behind every good cook is a good cleanup crew. Sometimes that's the same person, sometimes that's another family member. Luckily, in my case, Asaf has got my back.
Sometimes it's the dog.
Yeah, sometimes the dog comes in when we have a big spill. That was half the reason I was able to convince Asaf to get a dog, because he was tired of washing the floor all the time. So, like I said, this is a little bit of a laborious process, but it is totally worth it because it is going to let us make a totally grain-free latke in the end. And honestly, even if we weren't trying to make them grain-free and trying to extract the potato starch, you're going to want to squeeze them out anyway, because like I said, if your mixture is too moist, it's just going to fall apart in the pan.
You want to take one? Really?
Any questions or comments or anything while I'm doing this? I'm going to be here doing the same thing several times.
So far, you got positive responses for the messy kitchen.
I see Lori and Paul cooking along. How are you guys doing over there? All good. I see thumbs up.
Yeah, we're gonna spotlight a couple kitchens to see how it's going. Let's check it out, Laura and Paul. Wow, looks great. Love it. Also love your apron too. Man, nice. All right, thanks so much. Anyone else want to showcase how they're doing in their kitchen? Let's see, Nicole and Charlie, there's a lot of activity happening there. So awesome. Look at that. Nice. We won't ask you to unmute because you have all your hands are covered, but this is very cool to see. Let's see. Like scrolling through, we've got some serious note takers here. Anyone else want to show us how it's going? I see Stephanie. I think you have, let's see. Are you cooking along with us? Hey, let's take a look. Karan, if I was nearby, I would help be your cleanup crew. And I would get a dog and share it with you. 2021 goals. Oh, Stephanie, you might have frozen actually, so we'll come back to you. Oh, where is Dan? Let me find Dan. Oh, Lisa, looks like you're cooking along with us. How's it going in your kitchen?
Is this enough, Mom?
Oh, it's hard. I muted everybody. Okay, no worries, no worries. We didn't want all the background noise and it double backfired on us. Let's add one more spotlight to Dan. Looks like grandson. How's it going there? Awesome, great. It's hard for everybody to unmute, so we appreciate all the hand signals and smiles. Back to Heidi's kitchen.
Okay, so my sous chef here is working on some squeezing. My food processor always leaves some chunks. Now, you can save these aside for making your vegetable stock. You can compost them, or I'm just gonna chop them really fine and still include them. I'm just gonna do little tiny strips here because I don't like to waste anything. We just wanna make sure, like I was saying earlier, that we get more or less the same size as what we've got coming out of the food processor, because otherwise you're gonna bite. If you have a big chunk here from what you hand cut, it's not gonna get cooked the same as everything else. You're gonna bite in and get kind of a chunk of more raw potato. So I'm just gonna,
Is this good?
let me see, squeeze check. Oh, we got a little bit more in there. You will definitely have strong hands after this. Okay, and we are ready to finish the rest of the potatoes. Okay.
Do two more.
While she's doing those, let me show you if this is ready. So the reason we start by grating the potatoes, there you go. There you go. The reason we start by grating the potatoes instead of the onions is because we want to let these juices that
hard.
You having trouble?
Yes.
Teamwork, right? You do the button.
Oh. This dog.
Yes, it is a cheesecloth.
Yes. You can do it, like I said, with a tea towel, as long as the tea towel is a thin enough weave that you're going to be able to squeeze that liquid out.
I'll help you squeeze.
You want to help squeeze these? Okay. Let me just show them here. So when you let this is what we squeezed out of the potatoes. When you let this sit, you're going to see, if you can see how I'm tipping it here, at the bottom, we have the potato starch is starting to settle. So we're just going to let this sit for a few more minutes to really let that starch come out while we squeeze the rest of these. Let's squeeze it into another bowl here so that this one can really start separating. Because if we keep adding to the same bowl, then it's not going to have a chance to separate as well. There you go.
Thank you.
Some in there. I've got a second cheesecloth here so we can get going. And I have 2 onions here peeled and ready because they are kind of small. So I'm going to do 1.5 and then see how that ratio looks. I might do the second one. If you have a ginormous onion, you're only going to need 1. If you have tiny onions, you're going to need 2 at least.
Mommy, is this good?
Let's see. Get most of it. There you go.
Ah.
We've got potato shreds going everywhere. The dog's gonna love it. Hanukkah present for the dog.
Yeah.
For some more? Go, Anna. Did you want to turn squeezing some potatoes too?
Hold on.
Okay. Sorry, I'll get one. I'll do this one and then I'll get the next one cut for you to do.
Here comes the dog.
Here she comes. Clean up crew. You're supposed to stand
Heidi, again, that the sauce tastes delicious.
Okay, will you wash your hands, please? Since you're back, coming back into the kitchen?
She didn't go.
No? Okay, so she was just whining at the door because she's bored. Because we're doing something other than petting the dog, so she
I
thought,
wanted her bowl.
Nicole and Charlie said that they made the mistake, and Lori and Paula made the mistake of pouring the starch water in the sink. We have extra potatoes. Should we grate them also in order to get more starch/water?
So we're gonna get rid of the water anyway. So if you poured the water, but your starch had already had a chance to set and it's still in the bottom of your bowl, you're fine because, and here, I can show you this next step. I think this bowl that we started with is ready. So we're just gonna go over here and we're gonna tip real quick the water so that the starch doesn't run out. So you can see here, we have this, it feels like almost like cornstarch, or if you've ever made that oobleck when you're a kid, or ooblecht, or whatever you call that. So if you still have this in the bottom of your bowl, you can use it and you haven't lost anything because we're not using that water anyway. If you have, I like to keep a little bit of extra potato starch on hand because you never know what the size of your eggs. If you end up with a little bit too liquid of a batter, you can add a little bit of potato starch. So if you did dump the starch from the bottom of your bowl and you have this potato starch on hand, you can just substitute this rather than grating up some more potatoes. But if you have no potato starch on hand and you dumped the starch as well as the water, you may want to do a couple more potatoes because you may have trouble binding your latkes together then. Ayala, where'd you go?
I'm here making the water break.
Okay, well, we need to finish squeezing these. Here's one for you to squeeze. This is the one that you just did, right, sweetie? Just check it. Oh, you got all the water out of that one. Good job.
You're already getting strong hand.
You are. Okay, give that a go. And then we have like maybe one more handful's worth in here. And then we'll switch over to our onion.
Heidi, can cornstarch be used if you don't have a?
I have never tried it, but I think that would work. Yeah, you could probably use cornstarch. You just then give up your grain-free label. So if you are paleo or doing Whole30, you wouldn't want to add cornstarch. But if you're in a pinch and those things don't matter to you, cornstarch should be a good substitute. because it's a very similar texture. I'm just going to check on our shakshuka over here. I'm going to turn it down a little bit now. Got a good simmer, and as you can see, it's getting, the tomatoes are getting more and more broken down. We're going to end up with almost like a thick paste. And we're done.
Mama,
Mm-hmm.
I know a tip on squeezing.
Oh, okay. We have a live, this just in, live tip on for squeezing the potatoes. What do you recommend?
Can like twist the cloth and then
Get more leverage. That's a great tip. So Daphna says once you put your potatoes in, twist the top of the cheesecloth before you start squeezing, and that'll help you get more leverage.
And we have not chopped up the onions yet. You can see them over there next to Mr. Coffee. So we want to do them last, just otherwise everybody's going to cry for the wrong reasons.
I have yet to find any of the tricks that actually work for not having onions.
chewing gum works and wearing goggles.
Well, wearing goggles, yeah. That's not always
They say if you chew gum.
That's, you know, what my 10-year-old said. It works for her, but I haven't had good luck with it. So if you guys have any tips, feel free to shout them out or drop them in the comments for how we can protect our eyeballs here.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
Let's see. Yep, good job. That one is dry. Let's check this one. Good job. You girls have really got the hang of it. Okay, go ahead and dump those
Why did you
potatoes in
put some-
so that you can dump them in while I refill this last one. All right, here you go, Ella. You want to squeeze that last one? Okay. Now I'm going to put my grating blade back in my food processor. And I'm going to grab my onions. Like I said, if you have, oh, and we've got these too, you girls can squeeze here. If you have a ginormous onion, just use one. If you've got teeny tiny onions, use a couple, 2, 3. Again, I cook by eye. If you get too much onion, it just kind of overpowers the flavor. If you get not enough, then
It's bland.
yeah, it's a little bit bland. And you can switch this up for how you like it. If you really love that oniony flavor, go for it. Add an extra onion. If you're sensitive to onion, if it gives you a stomach ache, if your family doesn't really care for the flavor, go easy on the onion. Just put a little bit. And like I said before, this is a very basic latke recipe. This is like the building block. You can get, ready for checking? You can get as fancy as you want with these. You can make them just the basic. I like them this way. Maybe I'm a purist, I don't know. But you can add fresh chives. You can add fresh parsley. You can make them with leeks instead of regular onions if you like. And that's going to give a little bit more of a fluffy texture. You can add curry powder in here. Whatever you like, you can get as fancy or as simple as you want. As I said, this is just the basic. It's the way I like it. But feel free to, once you get the hang of it, feel free to make this your own and jazz it up for whatever occasion. All right. My zhuzher.
I'm getting the onions out.
Yep, we're getting the onions.
I get some gum. We're up here.
And these don't need to be very finely cut. I'm just cutting off the ends and cutting them in half so they'll fit in my food processor. So nothing fancy happening here. Depending on the of your food processor, you may have to. And just like with my potatoes, I'm left with a few chunks of onion on the top. Again, you can just save this for the next time you're making vegetable stock, or you can just chop it up by hand real quick and add it in, which is what I'm going to do.
You like things?
Yep. Okay. Now we can use these same bowls. So again, I have another bowl here with the potato juice. I'm just going to dump it out real quick. I'm going to get a spatula. You can see all this nice potato starch that I have here in the bottom. I'm going to scrape that into our bowl. And you know what? Once we add the onion, I might change to a bigger bowl for mixing, but just for now, this will be the trick. And we have our other bowl here too that we started earlier. You can see all that nice potato starch.
Mama, how does it make potato starch?
Well, the starch is in the potato. And when we squeeze it, it's kind of separating it's bringing some of the liquid out, which is where the starch is. The starch is in the liquid part, I guess, once we squeeze it. And when we let it sit, the starch is heavier than the water, and so it sinks to the bottom. Okay, now your onions are gonna give way more juice. Let me just show the first one. Way more liquid than your potatoes did. And there is nothing we're gonna use from this onion water, so you may want to dump it frequently just to keep your eyes from stinging too badly. Here, now you can do the rest. Oops, there's a chunk that made it through. Don't want that. Oh, I'm feeling my eyes.
Me too.
Okay, well, Beth now works on squeezing that onion. I'm going to do another taste of our shakshuka.
To open the window, maybe?
Open the window a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to freeze your avocado plants.
And my peas.
Pardon me. Just
And
want to
my
get a
plants
spoon.
are very psycho. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to bounce back here and taste our shakshuka. You can see it's getting thicker. It's less runny.
I think it's done, Mama.
Tasty. That is how I like it. Again, you might want it more smoky. You might want it more spicy. The trick here is just to make it how you enjoy it. So if you like a real kick in the mouth of that smoky flavor, go ahead and add more smoked paprika. If you like it more mild, add less. And in fact, if you don't like the smoky flavor, you can just use regular paprika. You don't have to use smoked paprika. So these recipes are very adaptable to personal tastes and preferences.
Oh, I see the gun. It's up there. Can I come? No. Can you just get that one down?
Squeeze these.
My eyes are really badly stinging.
So you can see here now we're adding our onion.
Yeah, and the same grate size was used for the onions as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
That's okay.
So you bet. By the time you find the gum, I think we're gonna have the onion cooking it anyway.
Okay. I want to find the next. Sorry.
So you can see just from my 2 relatively small onions here, how much liquid I'm getting out. This bowl is half full already, and I think I already dumped it once after the first squeeze.
Whoa.
Yeah. I have yet to come up with a repurpose for this onion juice. If anybody has any suggestions of what that might be good for, like I said, I hate to waste. I try to use as much of everything as I can, either in a recipe or save it for stock or at least put it in compost, but I have yet to come up with any redeeming use for onion juice other than maybe as like a home security system, just plant it around your house so any intruders get eyes stinging and don't rob you. Yes.
We had a couple suggestions in the chat.
Oh, great. Let's hear
for soup broth, ramen broth, or French onion soup.
Oh, French onion soup. I hadn't thought of that. That is
But I do like your Home Alone style
home security system.
alarm system.
Okay. So now all that's left here in the bottom is just, I can't really even get that in my hands. It's just your onion juice. So yeah, if you were making French onion soup, this would be great. I'm not today, so I'm just going to dump it. But now I know next time, that's a great suggestion. I'll have ingredients on hand to do that. Before we go on to finish mixing up the latke batter, I'm going to start our oil going here. Now I'm going to use avocado oil. It's high oleic, which means it has a high smoke point. It means you can get the temperature of the oil very high before it starts to burn. This one says 500 degrees. You can also use sunflower oil. It's high oleic. I believe some people use lard. I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with that because I don't cook with it. But avocado oil is very healthy. And it's a little bit on the pricier side, but I find it worth it. It has no flavor. So the only drawback would be 1, the price, and 2, if you're allergic. I have an aunt who is allergic to avocados, so I would not be able to use this if she were here for Hanukkah this year. So I'm going to pour in a fairly generous amount. Also, if you have an at-home deep fryer, you can deep fat fry these. I don't have one because I would probably fry everything and that would not be good for my health. But if you have one, feel free to drop these in the basket of your deep fryer. I'm going to heat this up going to start preheating. I'm going to put it on medium high. So again, I don't have numbers here. I just have low, halfway, and high. And so I'm going halfway between halfway and high. And we're going to just let that start to heat up because you want that good and hot before you put your latkes in, because our dough or our batter is going to be a little bit chilly still, and it's going to drop the temperature a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're at a good high preheat before we get started.
Can you use a mixture of oils?
Yeah, you can if you only have a little bit of this and that on hand. You just want to be careful if you're using an oil that has a flavor. You want to make sure that the flavors are compatible. Like some oil, like if you're going to use a coconut oil, if you're using the kind that doesn't have the coconut flavor removed, that's going to add a flavor. And if you combine that with like a canola oil, which I find has a little bit of a flavor, you might get sort of a weird mishmash of flavors. So, but if you're going to use like a sunflower oil, which has no flavor, and an avocado oil, feel free to mix. You don't want to use an olive oil for this type of frying because it has a much lower smoke point. And so you're going to end up with a burned sort of smoking pan and sort of just a rancid burnt flavor to your latkes. And it also, I find, has a strong flavor, which I don't really think is compatible. I love olive oil in a lot of things, but I don't really find it compatible with latkes. Maybe that's just because I'm not used to it. Okay, so here we have our...
Have you ever used peanut oil to fry?
Not to fry latkes. You could. Our girls have several friends who have deathly allergic reactions to peanut.
I have one friend.
Yeah, and Dafna has a friend. And
my friend sibling.
yeah, anyway, we know several people who have peanut allergies, so I just generally don't go there because when it's not a pandemic, I love to cook for everybody. We'll have a big Hanukkah party. I'll make, like the 15-pound sack of potatoes from Costco. I'll make that whole thing of latkes, and we'll have everybody we know, friends, neighbors, come over. So I haven't used peanut oil, but it's only because of the allergy factor. But that would work if you were gonna, if that wasn't an issue for you. All right, we are now going to add a little bit of salt. Again, I'm not a huge measurer. This is kind of to taste. And again, what I like to do is I'll mix it up. I'll make one, I'll taste it, and then I can always add more. But you can't take salt away. So I'm putting in here to start, I'd say about a teaspoon. I've got kind of the palm of my hand filled. And I also find, it depends what kind of salt you're using. This Himalayan sea salt that I got at Costco, can you tell I love Costco? I find to be quite a bit saltier than just your average Morton table sea salts. So a teaspoon of that is comparable maybe to a teaspoon and a half of your regular table salt. Now we're gonna get some eggs here. For this size batch, I'm gonna start with 2 eggs, but have more on hand if I need them. Because again, you can always add more, but you can't really take out in this situation. So I'm gonna crack my eggs. Instead of cracking them directly into the batter, I'm gonna crack them into a bowl because if I have an issue and I don't see, like I got a little shell there, it's a lot easier to fish it out of a bowl than it is to fish it out of our mixture. Wash up since I've handled raw egg. Now I'm going to grab a fork. Oh, it's not a fork.
Regarding the onions were added to the potatoes and squeezed in the same fashion.
Yep. So we took the shredded onion by the handful and put it in the cheesecloth, squeezed it out, and we added it to our potato and our potato starch mixture. So if you haven't drained your potato water yet, go ahead and drain your potato water and put your potato starch in with your mixture. I'm just scrambling these up. It doesn't have to be like fancy for an omelet. Just give it a little bit of a zhuzh. Pour that in there. You can add pepper. My mom is allergic to black pepper, so I'm kind of in the habit of not putting it. But since she's not here eating today, I'm going to put some pepper. Again, you can adjust this. If you love pepper, you love a little bit of spice, go ahead and put in a ton. If you're sensitive to it or you don't like it, you can leave it out. And again, I'm going to make the first batch. I'm going to fry them up and I'm going to taste them. And if it's a little bit bland, I'm going to add more salt and more pepper. No harm done. All right, so I've got my egg in here now. You can see my onion, the potato starch is in here. I'm going to mix it all up. This is why I went to a bigger bowl, because you can only imagine what would be happening if I stayed in the smaller bowl. I have made that mistake. Asaf has paid the price on the cleanup end. You want to make sure you get your onion evenly distributed here. So just make sure, like I'm kind of smushing with my fingers as I go, just to break up, because when you squeeze out the water from the onion, oh, here's a big chunk that kind of got in there by accident. I'm just going to pull those out. When you squeeze the onion, it gets kind of dense and clumps to itself. So you kind of have to break it up with your fingers. Now, how do I know if I need to add another egg? Well, I can smell that oil's getting close. I'm going to take this a little bit here, and I'm going to press it in my hands. Now, it kind of holds together. It's not going to hold together like modeling clay. There's a little bit of an art to this, but this is not quite holding together enough for me. I'm not going to be able to get this in the pan without it falling apart. So I'm going to add another egg. Like I said, I always like to start small and add more, because if you've added too much egg, you can compensate with more potato starch, but only if you have it on hand. It's just easier to add more than more egg than to try to compensate for it being too moist.
Is there something you can use as a substitute for egg, as a binder?
Not that I've encountered. You could probably hit up the internet. I know there are. In fact, in Bon Appetit magazine this month, I just read about a vegan latke recipe, but they load it up with, there's flour and lots of grain in there. So if you're more concerned with going the vegan route than the grain-free route or the gluten-free route, you can use like a flour in here or some fine breadcrumbs. Okay, we're doing better now. As you can see, I just pinched that in my hand and it's holding together. It's still, if I shake it, it's gonna fall apart. But when I squeeze it, oops, I didn't get quite enough there. When I squeeze it in my palms, it's gonna hold its shape. So I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna wash up again on account of the raw egg. I'm gonna check my oil. From the smell of it, it's ready, but since you at home can't smell it, I'm gonna show you a trick. You can test with a wooden spoon, put the back end of the wooden spoon in. And can you see how those bubbles are starting to form? Oh. I did not dry my hands thoroughly enough. Rookie mistake. Oil and water do not mix, as you can see. So make sure, don't be like me, make sure you've dried your hands well. So let's try that again. You're gonna put the base of your wooden spoon in the oil, and you can just see those gentle bubbles forming. If it really starts to go nuts, then your oil is too hot. When you just get those little gentle, and I like to test it in a lot of different places, because as much as the companies that make these pans like to tell you they cook and heat evenly, it's not always the case. So I'm gonna test it all around. I'm seeing I've got little bubbles everywhere. So that seems to be just the right temperature. I also have prepared here a cookie sheet for when they're done with some paper towel. And I've got my slotted spatula. I like to use the slotted spatula for taking them out because it allows more oil to drain off. If you don't have one of these, you can use a regular spatula or whatever you like to fish them out. All right, so that's all ready to go for when they're gonna come off. And we're gonna get our first latkes in. So.
Karen, I think you hit a sore spot. Heidi definitely prefers cooking with gas. Unfortunately, that's what we have.
Yeah, when I get my dream and we get to totally gut and remodel this kitchen and I get my dream kitchen, we will have a gas stove. I grew up on a gas stove and I'm so much more comfortable with it, but you know, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So right now I work with electric. So to form these latkes, like I said earlier on, I like to fill my palm and put my palms to palm and squeeze. I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of excess liquid here. It might be egg. It might be a little bit that's left in the potatoes and the onions. You can see I have a nice puck here. And I'm just going to gently put it into my oil. You don't want these to be touching, so you don't want to crowd your pan too much. And you're going to get the occasional little piece that breaks off. That's okay. We're going to go through and fish those out between each batch. Because if you leave them in, you're going to get those burnt and you're going to get just the smoky, stinky house. It won't affect the latkes that you're actually making, but it's going to make it a less pleasant experience. And I prefer to make these in the cast iron, but we've got our shakshuka going in the cast iron, so I'm using a different pan today. And when I'm making a huge batch of these for our Hanukkah party, and I'm serving a ton of people back before the pandemic when we could have people over, I will get like 4 different pans going on the stove, all with hot oil, so I can really crank these out. Because going 4 at a time, this will be a little bit of a slow process. You can see they're already starting to brown up. By the way, I put maybe like a, what would you say that is, Sudie? Like a 1/4 inch of oil in here.
Yeah.
So you can see it's getting nice and brown on the edges, and I'm able to pick it up and flip it. If you can't pick it up yet, like this one, I think if I try to pick it up, it's going to fall apart. That's a sign it's not ready to flip yet. This one is ready. I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit because I don't want the outside to cook faster than the inside. If my outside gets burnt before my inside is cooked, then you're not going to have a good latke eating experience. And you may need to adjust as you go as well. As we cook more and more latkes, the oil is going to get soaked up with the latkes, and we're going to have to add a little more oil and let the temperature come back up. We're not there yet. We're still just on our first batch. How's our shakshuka doing? Are we ready for our eggs?
We are ready.
Okay. So while these fry, I'm going to take over the camera, and Asaf is going to show you.
Actually, you can carry on.
Okay. You got
Yeah.
Happy with there behind the camera. So why don't you tell us about
Sure.
the name shakshuka and the verb leshakshak?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So according to Wikipedia,
A trusted source.
yes. So, I mean, shakshuka is found all over the Middle East. A lot of people relate that to the Ottoman Empire. The actual name Shakshuka or even Tuktuka seems to come from Northern Africa. And there are some indications that it did come from that region. First of all, I think Heidi mentioned people who emigrated to Israel from Northern Africa brought that dish with them to Israel, and we all benefited from it. And also, there are places in southern Italy where there's an Italian dish called uova all'inferno, which is basically eggs in hell, which is
Hopefully these taste better than that.
yes, and probably brought in by the Moors through Sicily. And you will see why these eggs are going to feel like they're in hell in a minute.
All right, actually, I'm going to pull out before we add our eggs here, I'm going to pull out our first batch because I don't want to burn anything over here. If you have paper bags from the supermarket, those work great on here because they really soak up a lot of oil. Ooh, come back here, slippery little guys. So you can see these guys are nice and brown on both sides. But here, let's set this down. I'm just going to chop into one so you can see. On the inside, we're still nice. These are cooked, but they're not browned all the way through. They're still going to be nice and tender and delicious on the inside. I'm also going to taste a little bit to see if we need to add more salt before I put in the next batch. Needs more salt. Delicious, but needs more salt. So I'm going to go back and add maybe another half a teaspoon. Maybe a little bit more. All right, let's add our eggs here. So I'm gonna have to be brave because you can't really do this into a bowl first. So I'm gonna just really hope I don't get any shell in there. I'm just gonna crack it.
Can you bake latkes instead of frying?
You could, or you could put them in an air fryer. You're just not going to get as rich of a mouthfeel. They will be healthier for you, of course. But part of the reason that we fry them in the Jewish tradition is because we are celebrating Hanukkah, which is celebrating the miracle of the oil for the lamp to keep the eternal flame going. That when the Maccabees took control of the temple in Jerusalem, there was only enough oil left for one night to keep the eternal flame going, and it took 8 nights or 8 days to make more oil. And so the miracle of Hanukkah is that oil lasted for 8 days until more oil was made, and so the eternal flame never went out, which is considered a miracle. And that's why we actually seek out oil-based foods on Hanukkah. So oh, and I'm just going to go in here and grab, you see these little bits? This is why I like the slotted spatula. This stuff will burn. You can already see it starting to burn here. And that's what's gonna kind of make your house smell a little bit burned and give a little bit of a rancid flavor to this oil if you don't pick these guys out.
And I'm going to step in just for a minute. So after you put the eggs in the pan, so the word shakshuka means basically to scramble or like a mixture. And one of the things you can do with the eggs after you put them in the pan is take a piece of fork or maybe a skewer or something and just spread the whites all around, kind of just spread them around. It's going to give it a nice marbly texture. You want to be careful not to break the yolk. Just scramble the white part around. And as it cooks, it'll create this really nice white sort of marbly and also give it more stability as you take it out of the pan.
Yeah. Anytime I've seen this shakshuka like on a menu or on a cooking show, they always just cook it as a whole egg and serve it up that way, maybe just because it looks pretty. But the traditional way to do it, if you're doing a true shakshuka, you have to do the shakshuking part.
Exactly.
And while he's doing that, I'm just adding another set of latkes to the pan after I fished out my little cooling dish. And regarding eating the latkes, you can eat them plain. You can add sour cream on top when you eat them. You can add applesauce. There's kind of two camps, the applesauce camp and the sour cream camp. I'm in the sour cream camp because I love all things dairy. You could also dress them up however you want. You can put like a spicy jam on there. You can enjoy these. You could crack and like do a fried egg and put it on there. You could serve these up however you like.
Another comment about the shakshuka, if at this point, we lower down the heat a bit, so we're not cooking with full blast. If your nose is driving you nuts and you want to have this sooner than later, you can just cover it, as Heidi's going to do now. You can cover the shakshuka a little bit just to get the yolks cooking faster. They'll allow you to dive in faster as well.
Watch out, Cindy. I don't want you to get sprayed with oil. Side is not, those two are not quite ready yet to flip. So I don't know if we're okay for time. Julia and Stephen, I know it's 12:20. So if you want, we can just finish this off together. If you need to get moving on to your next projects and let the lovely people have the rest of their afternoon, we can just answer any questions and end it here. So I don't know what your schedule and time frame is like. Basically, the rest here, we're just going to be frying the rest of our, we've got still quite a bit, frying the rest of our latke batter, waiting for our egg yolks to set up. And you can eat these however you like. If you like them over easy, you can pull them out sooner. If you like them over hard, you can cook them longer. It's just up to your personal preference. The FDA would warn you that consuming raw or undercooked egg causes the risk of salmonella. So there's that, but you guys, you do you.
Mm-hmm. And dip a nice fresh piece of bread in shakshuka.
Yeah, I like
it's
to make
always a good treat.
I like to make a challah maybe on Friday, and then on Saturday we'll make this for brunch, and we can dip that fresh challah bread in the shakshuka, or sourdough if you are on the sourdough train. That I know so many people have gotten into making sourdough during Corona quarantine. I'm just gonna grab my.
Yeah, this is amazing. You have, wow, like whipped up in a feast, which is incredible. And this is the one detriment. We're not all together to taste this, but those of you who will create it at home, I think we can take some questions, and we have everyone still on the line. We do have a double header today. So we're starting our day with savory, and then we're going to sweet at
I'm going to that class. I'm super excited about it. Teaching in the morning and a student in the afternoon.
Oh my God, amazing. So we want to give you a chance to recharge too. So we'll give it about 10 more minutes. If anyone, Stephen, I see a few questions, and if you want to give any other tips or people want to ask.
I did want to give one tip about reheating these, because it's easier to make a huge batch than to crank up your hot oil, every day. It's also going to make your house smell amazing, but like fried food, it's going to make your hair smell like fried food. So if you just want to make one huge batch and make yourself and your house smell like fried food for one day instead of like, say, 8 nights of Hanukkah, you can make a huge batch and reheat them. You can either reheat them in the oven or the toaster oven, or you can throw them back in a pan. Just don't add any more oil because they already have so much oil soaked up into them. If you add oil to your pan to reheat them, it's just going to get to be like an oily blob. But you can just throw them in a dry pan over about medium heat or a little bit higher if you need, depending on the kind of pan and the kind of heat you have, till they get a little bit crispy again on the outside and soft on the inside. I like to throw them in the toaster oven because then I don't have to monitor them as much. When they're in the pan, you kind of just have to keep an eye and make sure that they're not burning. So let's hop to questions if anybody has any questions.
There was a question about finishing the shakshuka in the oven if you have a cast iron.
Yeah, you could do that too. You can see our whites are cooking there. We want to give that another little scramble. Let's see how we're doing. You just want to be careful if you're doing it in the oven not to dry it out too much. So I would recommend if you have like a lid to put it on just to keep some of that moisture in there. But if your shakshuka is a little runny anyway, throw it in the oven and that'll help dry it out too.
You want to have one example of a serving suggestion?
Yeah.
Of the shakshuka?
Oh, the shakshuka, sure.
Yeah. I mean, the best way actually is to just serve one big cast iron in the middle of the table and a bunch of people with freshly baked challah or bread and just dip in. In the day of Corona, it might not be the best.
Oh, let me just get another batch of these latkes going in here so that my oil doesn't get too hot.
It's still smoky.
Still smoking in the house?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the downside of frying things is it gets a little bit smoky in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Keep in mind your batter has raw egg. I'm kind of a stickler for that. I wash my hands between every batch. Some people aren't quite as worried about it as I am, but all right, so let's get a bowl.
Also, I meant to say this earlier. We love Rao's tomato sauce in my family too.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also a Costco classic.
Yes. Okay, so if you did want to serve this up in individual servings, you take a spoon here, just get in under the egg. These are done. This one now here is about over easy for those who like a real runny yolk. Make sure we get enough of this good stuff in here.
Have that batch.
You want to have this one? Sure.
Are you hungry?
Yeah.
You ate yesterday.
Now, if you want to be fancy, if you're not just serving this up for your family, you can just take it. There we go. And make sure either you pull out the bay leaves before you serve it or you let whoever is eating know not to eat the bay leaves. Hopefully they know that, but you never know. And you can eat this with a fork or a spoon.
Did I get a bay leaf?
I don't think you got a bay leaf. You could sprinkle this with some fresh parsley for garnish.
Enjoy.
And she's off. These are about ready for flipping. Yeah, it's a little blonde, so we're gonna leave that just a little longer. You want to try to avoid flipping them more than once because every time you flip them, they soak up a fresh serving of oil. So, you know, I put them in and I'll kind of lift them to check them, but I don't like to flip them and then flip them again if I can avoid it. Sometimes, you know, you make a judgment call and you think it's ready and you flip it and then it cooks and then you're looking at it and you're like, well, I could get a little bit more brown. So you can flip it back, but that is going to make it soak up more oil. And as your oil gets low, so far mine is still high enough, but as it gets low, you're going to need to add more. Just make sure that you give your oil a little bit of time to heat up again once you add fresh oil from the jug. Because otherwise you're not going to get that nice sizzle when you put it in. It's not going to get quite as brown. I'm going to put the lid back on that shakshuka because I like my eggs over medium. So that's a little bit runny for me. Any more questions out there? Okay, now we're ready to flip. Look at that nice golden. I also, when I flip them, I like to squish them a little bit, just because that helps it cook more evenly and more quickly. Because if it's bulbous in the middle, then the edges, when you flip it, aren't going to necessarily get in the oil. So I like to flip them and just give it a little bit of a smush. As you can see that one from the shape of my hands when I make them, it's a little bit pumped up in the middle. So I'm just going to push that down just a little bit to help it get cooked in the oil a little bit better. And I forgot to test. I added more salt and I didn't test the fresh one. So I'm going to do that now to see if we need to add even more salt. And also because I'm hungry. Just right. Now, let's say you had an incident with your salt and you put in too much. You can always go back to the drawing board, zhuzh up another potato, zhuzh up another half an onion, squeeze them out, throw them in there, mix it up. And you can compensate if you've over salted that way. Any more questions?
What are you drinking with your dishes?
I like, I've got my soda stream over here. I really just like my fizzy water. You can get the little bottles of flavor here. Like this is this is grapefruit, and you can put it in. I like the soda stream because you can control how much bubble, how much fizz is in it. I don't like a super bubbly, like hurts your nose, like a can of soda. I just like, when we lived in Israel, I used to get this Italian seltzer water that said it was gently sparkling. And that to me is perfect. So I like soda stream because you can control how much fizz you put in it. And also it's better for the environment because it comes with a reusable bottle. So you're not always tossing the cans.
We should ask for royalties for all
right.
product placement.
I'll become an influencer.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, fork down. All right.
Dog is happy.
Yeah, dog is happy. Check these guys. And you can see mine aren't all the exact same size. So like these littler ones are probably going to be ready to come out first. And also, the one that you put in first is probably going to be ready to come out first. So just keep an eye on those. And just be aware that they're going to kind of be ready differently at different times. So like these two, I'm going to leave in a little bit longer. And I'm going to wait to add a fresh batch just because I don't want to get anything with the raw egg on the cooking ones. Because like I said, I'm kind of a stickler for that sort of thing. Nobody wants salmonella. How are we doing here with our shakshuka? That's looking good. That's about an over medium now. Anybody want over medium? You want some shakshuka with an over medium egg? No, you're good?
I didn't really like shakshuka.
You want one with over medium?
Sure.
All right. And coffee. That's the other thing I'm always drinking, especially at brunch. I like a good fancy coffee. I'm going to add hot pepper flakes to mine, even though it's after the fact and it won't be quite as baked in. I still really like a little bit of zing, unlike the other members of my family. So when I'll scoop one up for myself and show you what I like to do.
Well, it looks absolutely delicious.
Thank you. I wish you could taste it. I wish you could smell it. Who's going to invent smell-o-vision? Anybody out there? We got any?
I think the next version of Zoom.
That's $1 million. Yeah.
Did we not turn on the smell feature?
It's
So,
only
for my personal serving, I'm just going to go ahead and dress it with a little bit of hot pepper flakes because that's how I like it. Oops.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining us. This has been so much fun. I love cooking. My family loves cooking. We love cooking together, and I'm so happy to share that joy with you guys. And I hope that this made cooking by eye a little less scary. I know that for some people that can be a little bit intimidating, but as you can see, just adjust as you go, feel it out, taste it. You want to say anything?
Fine.
And yeah, I think hopefully this took just a little bit of the, sorry, I'm gonna grab these before they burn.
Well, thank you so much to you and your family.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Anybody want to do a last kitchen cam showcase if you've cooked along with us? Let's see, I'm going to do Stephanie. I see you coming up. How's it going? Want to show us what you've got? And Cindy, I'm going to add a bunch of spotlights. So we've got Cindy. That looks awesome. Stephen, see if you can capture a picture of this as we're going. Amy, I'm going to add you here. We'd love to see your dish. How does it look? Feel free to bring it into, let's see. Oh, and Lori and Paul, this is awesome.
I'll take a picture in 1 sec once we got most of our spotlights up.
All right, who else wants to showcase? I think I got everybody at the moment who's got a good view. So let's
All
go
right.
with this crew.
I'm gonna take a picture. 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
Awesome. This is so great. Thank you so much. Asaf, you were great behind the camera. Thank you. And Heidi, your family was amazing. And all of you were incredible participants. Oh my gosh, I love this. We've now invented the kitchen cam. It will happen at every class moving forward. You will get an email thanking you for joining us and asking you for your feedback and suggestions. It's been great to have so many other teachers joining us too. So thank you for continuing that. And I know Heidi's going to join us in half an hour for Kretz with Isabel. But if anybody is interested in teaching, you can let Stephen or me know. We always love featuring chefs of all ages and backgrounds. So please
On
reach
your
out.
face.
Oh my goodness, that is close up for the camera.
It's yummy.
Looks so good. All right, Stephen, are we gonna call it a afternoon for now?
We are all good.
I'm muted.
All right, thanks everybody.
Okay, yeah. But
Thank
as
you so
we say in
much.
Hebrew, B'tei avon, which is like bon appetit. B'tei avon.
Tavone. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
family.
Julia. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody
you.
who
This is
came. This was so
awesome.
much fun.
I love this part, watching everybody kind of drop off. This is great.
Hey.
Keep an eye on the Latkes.